the coast is in a crisis. In April of this year, April the 18th to be exact, the governor declared an emergency, the coast of Louisiana to be in a state of crisis and emergency. When we put the master plan together, we put basically three scenarios together: a low scenario, a medium scenario, and a high scenario, what could possibly happen to the coast. If we do nothing going forward, the next 4 or 5 slides, if we do absolutely nothing, don't spend a dollar, this is what will happen to our coast, we predict, in the next 50 years. Under our assumptions for low scenario, we're looking about an 1,800 square mile loss. If you're looking at the medium scenario, about 2,100 square miles. And if we experience all of the things that come with the high scenario, you're looking at 4,000 square miles of land loss. Pretty drastic situation. You know, we're here today to talk about what this means to Jefferson, St. Tammany, and Orleans Parish. If I look at Orleans Parish, if I do nothing, this is a future, see if this works, future without action, year 50 for Jefferson Parish. This says that if I do nothing, I'm going to lose 42% of my land, okay? A loss in the parish. I'm going to have estimated annual damages of $500 million. If we do nothing, Orleans is going to realize a 32% loss of land. Estimated annual damages in the $400 million range per year. But what you have is flooding, a lot of flooding going on in these areas. You can see here after year 50, a lot of purple here. That's over 15 feet of flooding in the Slidell area. And this red area, 13 to 15 feet up and around Covington in this area. So it's pretty devastating. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll never get to where we were, where the marsh was in 2010. It's not going to happen. Okay? It's just, there are some situations out there that are irreversible. I don't care how much money we have. I don't care how quickly we can get a permit through the process. It's just not doable. But we can slow it down and we can sustain ourselves for a long time. So with the plan, Jefferson Parish, this future land change, that 42% of loss that we'll see, we can reduce that by 56% by applying this plan. We can reduce on an annual basis our damages by $40 million, and over a 50-year span, we can reduce that by $300 million by delivering these projects, okay, in the master plan. In Orleans Parish, we can reduce that land loss by 83% if we implement this plan. We can reduce over a 25-year span, $70 million in annual damages and $200 million over 50 years. Then in St. Tammany Parish, not really looking at any land loss, okay? What's important here is the reduction in economic damages. For 25 years, $0.8 billion, and then $1 billion over the 50-year span, and these are the projects we're going to deliver there. I think we can identify, and I feel good about the fact that we can deliver $18 to $19 billion of our $50 billion plan. So what does that leave me? $32 billion short. Where are we going to get another $32 billion? Mark Davis is going to get up here in a minute. He's going to tell you how he's going to deliver to us $32 billion.
That's right. We're going to pass that.
But just as important as developing the plan, spending this $10 billion over the next 15 years, just as important is finding this other 32, and we have efforts in place to try to do that.
The master plan that Johnny just went through, the first thing you need to take from it is that our coast has changed and that our coast is changing. There is no stand pat option. The real question is, what are we going to do with the time, resources, and coast we have left? A lot of the work we've done has been on the financing and legal side, because it's sort of like me sitting down with an architect and designing a house. That does not build me a house. I have to get permits, I have to get a contractor, I have to pay workers, I have to get a loan. I've got to make all of it happen. And essentially, the master plan is the architecture. But we're the homeowner. We're the ones who are going to have to actually make the decisions and live with them. If we do not plan for our coasts and communities, somebody else will, and we're not going to like it. Insurance companies are going to plan. People who do bond ratings are going to plan. Companies that are going to decide whether to locate or remain in our communities are going to plan. And people who are going to decide whether this is where they're going to raise their families are going to decide. And those things, their planning process is going to be based on a completely different set of characteristics. And keep in mind that there's only one reason that Louisiana has a statewide building code today, and that is because the insurance industry said, if you don't have one, we're not coming back, after Katrina and Rita. We're going to hear more of those things after this storm season.
Funding is obviously a huge obstacle. What are some of the other obstacles these projects face?
Well, I'll go back to funding. Here's one that keeps me awake at night. To build a $14.5 billion system around New Orleans and southeast Louisiana, we had to come up with our cost share for that project. That translates to us having a commitment to pay back the federal government $100 million a year once the total project is delivered. Where am I going to get $100 million? If I have to take that out of my program, and I cannot take it from BP money, won't allow us to do that. Could come from GOMESA or it's got to come from the state. But it puts a huge hole in our program if we have to do that. So that's one of the things that keep me awake at night. Another thing that keeps me awake at night is the speed at which we receive our permitting. The best way we can leverage the $10.7 billion commitment that we have to do in the next few years, the next 15 years, is to do them as quickly as possible. And you've heard me say we're out of time. We don't have any more time. Some situations are irreversible. If I don't act within this window of opportunity, then I won't be able to do anything about it. So I've got to spend this money as fast as I can and still maintain the quality and the protection that I need. In order to do that, I need to have a permitting process that allows me to do that. And right now, it's a big hurdle with the Corps, and it's a big hurdle with federal agencies. And so that is an obstacle that keeps me awake at night. And then the third one is, and I think Mr. Davis alluded to it, and that's the operations and maintenance costs it's going to take to operate these systems that we put in place. Okay, the Corps puts something in place, and then they turn it over to us and say, "Here, you go maintain it." Well, that's all nice and fine. I just need the money to do it, and that's not part of our implementation budget. Part of our philosophy is what value do we have in reconnecting the river to the marsh, i.e. diversions. And so we are very much in support of and believe in diversions, and our models tell us that they're gonna do us good. And so that's how we're gonna reconnect with nature. One of the ways, in fact.
Before I let Mr. Davis answer that, oyster fishermen are concerned that those diversions will poison their oyster beds.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that concern probably 4 times a week out of the 5-6 days that I'm there. And that is a concern, and so we have to monitor salinity levels. We have to come up with ways in which we can make sure that we preserve the oyster industry, and we're working with them to do that, although it's very difficult at times. But I want the public to know that this is not something that goes in one ear at 10 miles an hour, out of the other one at 90. Okay, we're listening to them. We're trying to make sure that we can indeed work with the industry and preserve that industry. It's part of our culture, and it's part of the things that drive the economic value of the state.
How can we work better with nature?
Well, I think we have to understand that that's how we got here. And that if you don't understand the processes that built this place, and that's where I think, again, nature is not just the surface. The nature is also understanding what's beneath your feet, because, subsidence rates vary. The things that drive, land loss vary. So if you don't understand those things, you're working against nature. Also, I think that, for example, you can muscle water and sediment around, but it costs a bundle. The more that you're actually using the natural processes that built this place, the easier it is to do that. And also getting to, I think, the point that, about the oyster fishermen. The more you can make this a matter of what are the natural rhythms of this place, the more people seem to be willing to live with it. I mean, one thing I can tell you is that, whether we put water back out and sediment back into our estuaries to build land and keep us here or not, you are not going to have the same fisheries 20 years from now that you have today. Because essentially right now, instead of a river diversion program, we have a Gulf of Mexico diversion program. We're bringing salt water into areas that we have never seen it in human experience. So just understand that change is coming, as I said.
Mr. Bradberry, if levee and drainage systems in urban areas like New Orleans are hard to sustain because of low tax bases, what's the plan for sustaining new levees proposed in rural areas by the Coastal Master Plan?
Tough question. That's a very difficult one. It's a commitment by the communities, by the levee districts to raise monies in order to maintain their systems. It's a very sensitive subject. The paradigm today is that we have a lot of money. We've got BP settlement money, we've got GOMESA money coming in. That money should be used for that maintenance. Well, we've got to get the projects done. And so a commitment by communities to help sustain and maintain their systems is critical. And some communities are willing to do that, others are not. And so it's how do we change the paradigm of how you take care of a system that you've implemented for the long term. And that's it's not a very easy subject to approach and to deal with.